Are you looking for a new gaming mouse that doesn't break the bank, is relatively well built, and does a pretty good job at, well, being a gaming mouse? This is the Thermaltake Iris, and it could be for you. Let's take a look. So starting with a tour of the mouse, obviously this is a fairly standard FPS style. On the top you have the left and right click buttons, as well as a rubberized scroll wheel with a pretty heavy middle click button. You also have a DPI changer button as well. On the back of the mouse you have an RGB kind of element or a Thermaltake logo, which changes with the color of the which changes with the DPI setting that you have it on. You can change that in the software as well if you fancy. It does also have a bit of a sort of skirt around the back with a sort of rainbow RGB effect by default, although as I said you can also change that in the software. You do then on the left hand side have the two sort of extra buttons, the FPS style buttons, which are obviously by default back and forward in your sort of web browser if you haven't pre-configured them, as I said, in software. And otherwise on the right hand side you don't really have anything bar the sort of honeycomb texture. It's still hard plastic, it's not a nice sort of soft rubber or anything like that, but it does give a little bit more grip. The overall shape of the mouse is actually pretty decent, and the sort of FPS styling means that it is actually pretty comfortable in the hand. Now, as I mentioned, the sides aren't that grippy, but overall it does have a pretty good hand posture, and it suits both claw and palm grips depending on what you fancy. On the bottom you can see the two decently sized sort of anti-friction or glide pads, as well as obviously the sensor itself, which is a PMW 3325. That means that the mouse goes up to 5000 DPI, and for some reason has a 2000 Hz polling rate because, you know, bigger numbers, right? But otherwise it has the option, I'm not entirely sure if many USB ports would support that, but either way it has the option if you can use it. The mouse itself weighs 123 grams, which means that it's not the lightest in the pack, but it's not heavy either, so it's kind of a nice middle weight for the sort of esports kind of style games, you know, your CSGOs and things like that. And obviously with the 5000 DPI sensor and it being a 3325 and not a 3360 or anything like that, it's not necessarily the most accurate sensor on the market, but in my testing it was perfectly fine for my usage. And while the DPI steps I think are 400, 800, 1600, 3200 and then 5000, you can, as I said, configure that in software as well, so if you want to have it in different settings then you can do so. Now, a few notes on the quality of the mouse. The overall plastic feel isn't too bad. It doesn't feel very, I guess, premium in the hand, and I would mention that, as I said, there's no rubberized texture on either side, which means that it is a little bit less grippy than some other mice that you might find. Now, of course, this is a budget mouse, so you kind of come to expect that sort of thing. I would also mention that the plastic that they've used for the two left buttons and the DPI sort of changer button do feel incredibly cheap. The actual buttons themselves feel relatively well reinforced and have a decent tactile click to them, so that's good. It's just the actual plastic itself that they use isn't that great. Now, actually gaming on the mouse, I was pretty happy with it. It's not something that, you know, blew me away in terms of its kind of impressive ability to get headshots or anything, but it didn't kind of underwhelm me at all, especially considering the price that they're offering it at. I wouldn't say that this was necessarily a direct rival to things like the SteelSeries Rival 310, for example, but it does a decent job at the price point, and I generally would recommend it. So would I put this on my desk? Personally, no. The Cougar Surpassion is a bit of a nicer and more advanced mouse for the same price, and also even for me personally, I quite like the Razer Naga Trinity that I have, even though it's a lot more expensive than this one, and also the SteelSeries Rival 310 as I mentioned, but again, it's I think even potentially double the price, so it's something to bear in mind if you are looking for a new FPS mouse. Otherwise, if you're interested in it, feel free to take a look at the link in the description down below. They did also send me this Dasher mouse mat, which I'll leave a link to in the description down below as well. It's pretty nice. It's a pretty decent and wide size, which is obviously great, so I'll leave a link to that as well down there too. And otherwise, if you want to support the channel and keep me making these videos on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday basis, then make sure you check out the links in the description down below, and including and especially the Amazon affiliate links. You can also check out the Patreon link to support me directly, obviously the subscribe button if you're new to the channel with that bell notification icon, and otherwise if you want to check out other videos, there is plenty over here too. Otherwise, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what you think of this mouse too. Let me know down there too, and otherwise thank you for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.